Hello. Hello. Another Thursday and another saboteur.
Oh, yeah. There are quite a lot of them, aren't they?
They really are. They really are. And then we wonder why we are in such a muddle half the time. Well, this is why, because there are saboteurs at play. That's the truth. And this week, we're going to look at the avoider, which I find a really interesting one, and we'll get into that in a little while. But for you, Evie, how did the avoider show up on your...
It did. It's somewhere in the middle, my avoider, even though, I think I somehow relate to the avoider sometimes, but it wasn't that strong, at least not when I did the assessment. But I can see the avoider. When I was reading about the avoider, I can definitely see the avoider. The avoider is like the one that says, I'll do it tomorrow, because I don't want it to be imperfect because I'm not in the right state at the moment. Something along those lines. And tomorrow never comes because, when are you perfect, really? Or when is the situation perfect? So that's how I see the avoider generally. And of course, it sort of becomes that like a self-fulfilling prophecy of I'm not enough. Because of course I'm not, I'm not enough. Listen, I am avoiding things all the time. How can I be enough, Yeah. So that's how I see it in manifesting in my world. So what about yours?
So really interesting, because when I did that first assessment, my avoider and my restless were joint top. And of course, as is normal, there was a little bit of pushback from me, like, I don't avoid anything, I get stuff done, da, 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 da. I was having that conversation with myself so beautifully. And then I thought, no, stop with this madness and actually really have a look at why this has come up for you. And it took me a little while. I kind of went through the things that it was showing. Oh, this is the avoider and this is how it shows up. And I was like, I wasn't really feeling it. But then it was just like the penny dropped. I thought, oh my goodness, I know how the avoider shows up for me. The avoider is the one that shows up for me that brings my restless out to play. So it's like something needs to get done, something needs my undivided attention, and I don't want to give it to it for whatever reason, whether I think it's going to take too long, whether it just, it's just like it's going to be too time consuming, or, I can't do it on my own, whatever the thing is, but instead of acknowledging that and thinking, okay, I'm avoiding this thing. Why is it? What do I need to do to make it easier for me to do? What my natural reaction was bring in the restless. Let's go play and find something else to do. And for me, that was my big wake-up call to see how those two have been holding hands and skipping along merrily through my life. It's too much, too big, it's, you're not ready, da-da-da-da. Restless comes out and rescues me by giving me something else to do and completely takes me off track. So, and I tell you what, it's gold when you find this information. It's gold when you realize the patterns that have been running and that have been sabotaging things you've done. And as I look across so many of the projects that I have started or that I started over, maybe not in the last year or two, but certainly in the preceding years to that I started, that I didn't finish. And it wasn't that they weren't great projects, and it wasn't that I didn't have the ability to do them. It was simply that there was something came up, it was big, it needed attention, perhaps it needed other people, whatever it was, and I avoided taking an action around that and just let the restless take me off in another direction. I mean, that's like gold to have that information and be able to see it.
I love the way that you're describing these things, because I mean, they create these pictures in your head, and I'm like thinking, I don't know, in my mind when you say the avoider takes like the restless hand in hand and skip merrily, I'm thinking Little House on the Prairie. Somehow I don't know. Going outside and really enjoying whatever
Yes.
comes. Because on the first, like when you first look at this, you're like avoider and restless together. I mean, they don't really make any sense, because I'm restless, so I'm doing a lot of things, so I cannot possibly be avoiding. So it's very easy to misunderstand how those things do work together and can work together, because we often get like high numbers with saboteurs that we think they go against each other, but that's
Yes.
not really the case, is it? I was speaking with a lady the other day that she had two saboteurs that they were like really, like, I think the one was the hyperachiever and the other one was the avoider or something along those lines, like hyperachiever and avoider, and how is that possible? But again, you can see how much, very similar to what you were describing, them two can work together to stop you from actually taking that action at that little moment, that if you did get the action, you would have the results you wanted. And it's like, wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's do you know, and that is the whole, but wow, because it's almost like for me. So what I realize is that my avoider comes up when I'm feeling challenged. So there's no if, buts, or maybes. I totally see now how the avoider has. I'm feeling challenged. I'm feeling not enough to do this thing that needs to be done. Therefore, let me just get my restless so I can do something else, so I can still feel like I'm enough, but I'm going to doing something else. It literally has been that pattern. That has been the pattern. And the beautiful thing is now that I've identified that pattern in myself, I can change it. I can change it. Now when I sense that feeling of, okay, I can hear the avoider, like, oh, this is looking a bit big. This is like, oh, this is more than a day, and you haven't got a day, and all of that stuff that starts to come up. And I can go, okay, I hear you. I'm not going to respond to you. So this thing that I need to get done that is looking maybe too big, or needs I need some help on, what is the one thing that I can do that helps me go towards it? And instead of running away, because what the restless is doing is allowing me to run away, but still feeling like really good because I'm just doing something else. I'm doing something else that's really important too, right? So that feeding through it's been really, and I want to say it's been beautiful to see, because when you can actually see it happening, there is a kind of joy in being able to acknowledge it. Like for me, there's like, oh, okay, I see this now. And then being able to say, that has to stop. I'm afraid, avoider and restless, your relationship is over. We're not doing this anymore. and being able to do that, and being able to craft steps for myself so that I can break that relationship up, which really has, in the 6-7 months that I've been applying the mental fitness, has really helped me to break that relationship down. Yes, I know the avoider is still alive and well, and I still know the restless is alive and well. What they're not doing is having a little party in my head with the frequency they were doing before. I'm really being able to dial that down and really break that relationship up. And that means that I definitely feel completely able and enough to do what needs to be done, and to really live in my I am enough, because that's really what we're being called to do, is like live in your I am enough. We say it, we need to live in it. And that for me means being able to silence or dial down those voices that are telling us otherwise.
Absolutely, absolutely. I heard somewhere a very nice saying, it's like, you have to hold space for your I am enough. And it took me a while to realize what that meant. But in essence, it's like you taking the responsibility to accepting that you are enough, that, me taking the responsibility of accepting that I am enough. And whatever is happening around that circle, it can be challenging and it needs to be dealt with, but at least if you hold that space for yourself, you're empowering yourself to be more prepared. Exactly what you're describing, Yvonne. Like, knowing is power at the end of the day, because we can break the patterns, and we all work in specific patterns, whether we like it or not. It is how we move in life, how we're moving forward.
Yes.
And, hopefully we're all moving forward, because you don't want to be stuck in one place or moving backward. And if you do move forward, even if it is one step at a time or half a
Yes.
step at a time, one quarter of a step at a time, it's good enough.
Indeed. Indeed.
Let's keep going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think for anyone who's listening in, and if you recognize any of the avoider symptoms in yourself and you're thinking, oh my gosh, yeah, I kind of know what that looks like and feels like for me, the avoider definitely comes out to play. Is again, for me, it's always about bringing us back to understanding what the strengths are of that saboteur, because they are the essence of that saboteur has purpose, is there to support you. It's just that as the avoider, it's overplaying all of those things. So when the avoider is behaving and is in its power, when it's there to support you, so in its sage state almost, it seeks peace and harmony, both internally with self and with others, easygoing, even keel temperament, flexible and adaptable, tendency to be positive, and relatively non-judgment of others. Listen, all of those things
Fabulous.
are fantastic. We absolutely want to be able to tap into the beauty of those strengths. What we don't want, though, is to have that overplay where now they are holding you back from being in your brilliance, actually being able to step into your full potential. So really being able to get outside of the things that are comfortable to you, so that you can explore and expand. And the avoider will stop you from doing that if it is in your life and you are not aware of it, and if you're not then doing anything about it. And as I said, for me, it was a real wake up call to actually even be aware that the avoider was in my game plan, because that is not one. Like the restless, I knew restless like all day long. I know it, I see it, I feel it. But the avoider was a little tricky one for me, and I really wanted to push back, because I had always perceived myself as somebody as, I don't mind saying what needs to be said and I'll do what needs to be done. So it was just really interesting to actually have to pick that up and say, oh gosh, actually, this is a lot messier than I thought, and this intruder is actually really kind of killing my game and my joy here, and that's not okay for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It does make sense. And I think the reason why you felt that didn't resonate is because we have this notion that the avoider is somebody that doesn't like conflict, that doesn't like to be in a situation where, like, he will say yes to everything because he doesn't want to, create a situation that is uncomfortable for others and for themselves. But that's not the way the avoider shows up for everyone. Clearly, that wasn't the case for you, because you are a vocal person. You are like standing in your own truth. You know what is good for you, and you would go for that. So it's definitely not. But there are people that would avoid expressing themselves just
Yes.
because they don't want conflict. And that is also another way that the avoider can damage the way you show up
Yes.
in any circumstance.
Yeah.
Very similar to the pleaser, isn't it? In that case,
Yeah,
I think.
in some respects, yeah. And I can
Yeah.
see how the avoider, I can see the avoider in people that I know. I can see, and I know people who, mention the word conflict and they're almost running down the road. It's just like, no, none of that for me. That is not for me. That is not for me. I won't do it. And not understanding that actually conflict can be a really positive thing, because a conflict doesn't mean to say that you're ripping each other's heads off and you're arguing and you're right and you're wrong. We can have conflict and be able to converse, to communicate as adults and get to desired outcomes. So
Absolutely.
I think that there's also this connotation that goes with the word conflict that sends people kind of scattering sometimes. It's like, I don't want to have any conflict. I don't want to be in conflict. I don't like conflict. When actually sometimes conflict is necessary. Sometimes it's even necessary for us to get to the idea or the place that we need to get to. It's just how we approach it. And if we are being respectful, if we're doing it from that place of sage where we're exploring and we're being empathetic to each other's perspectives, and we are being innovative as we come up with, well, what's the middle ground, or what's the way we want to go, that doesn't mean to say that there's no conflict. We're just being adults about it, and we're using our sage strengths to find the right way to go. What we're not doing is just
Absolutely.
locking horns.
And I mean, there is growth in conflict, as
Yes.
you mentioned in a way. I mean, we shouldn't. I mean, it's not shouldn't. I mean, it might not be pleasant and might be challenging for some people. Uh, but yeah, you're very right. It is about how you go about it, and anything that you do through saves. Because that is about ease and flow, and it's not about hard things and challenges. It can be really good, and it can really give you results that you're not expecting in the good way.
Yes.
So
Yes, definitely. And I think actually mentioning about the whole conflict thing is that how we, as avoiders, the justification we give to the lies that come up, like, well, if I don't get into a conflict with this person, if then I'm being a good person because I'm saving their feelings. I mean, this is just like, really, how is that helpful if it doesn't solve the situation? Because actually what's happening is the situation is then just brewing, or the other person feels they have taken a win, if you like, and they just get their own way, and your view then doesn't get a look in, which means you end up feeling like you're not enough, like my view wasn't even worth it in the first place. So we have to be so careful of the lies that the saboteurs come with, that kind of give us a sense of, no, this is okay, this is okay. There's no good in conflict, and it's so much easier and better for me to just be completely flexible, even if it means my perspective and my views and my needs are not heard. It's all okay. And clearly that's not okay.
exactly, for how long?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, when you are coaching, Evie, with women, around the whole kind of career and their way forward and facing change, do you see, or have you seen the avoider come up in any of those situations?
I think more than I want to to express, and it is because change by definition is something that even though it's a constant and we all go through it, good or bad, it doesn't matter. A lot of us try to avoid it as much as possible, and even if it is change towards something that we know that is going to bring something good in our lives, we still are resisting. So that is the avoidance of like breaking the routine in essence. And for women that are like going from like not working to working, or trying to find what would be that next step from a career break, it is very often the case that you can see the avoider very prominent, because there are a lot of excuses behind why I cannot get what I really want, why I have to compromise for something less. And that's what shows up more in my world and with my clients. And it's like once you start shedding the light on this and say, well, as a matter of fact, you can get exactly what you want, as long as you can see the patterns and why these things are happening for you right this minute. What is the excuse and why it is an excuse? Then things start happening for my clients. Then things start becoming much clearer, and they go for what they want, and they are surprised that they get it. Which is like, okay, I mean, they are way more surprised than anyone else around them or in them. And I think that is also the case for most of us women, that, because we are the first ones to think that we're not enough. But usually the rest of our circle knows that we are, not only enough and more than enough, but then some. So, yeah, that's how it shows up in my world.
Yeah, and I think for me, as I'm thinking about previous clients and actually a couple of current clients, and I mean, it's great that kind of I use this model now in my coaching approach, because it really makes it so much easier to understand what is driving, what are those patterns that are not helping these kind of over played out parts of self. And I think quite often it's not wanting to have conversations. And this was an interesting one that came up for me, with not wanting to have the conversations with loved ones, i.e. family, that they needed to have time for themselves. Literally, in the whole realm of self-care, it's not that they didn't want to take care of themselves. It's not that they didn't think it was important. It was that, but by taking some time for myself, I'm going to be letting somebody else down. And that's not okay, because I'm the peacemaker. I'm the one who's flexible. I'm the one who needs to be there for everybody else. So there were all these things that are feeding into, and very kind of, I could see like how the judge was playing into that. Like, shame on you for thinking that you should come first. Shame on you for thinking that your needs are more important than X, Y, and Z. So that just feeding the avoidance, because, the minute you decide that you are going to prioritize your health and you are going to really put your needs at the top of your list so that you can serve everyone and everything else from a better place, it does require conversations. It's not something you just decide and everything changes. You need to have meaningful conversations with the people in your life so that they kind of know what is going on and what you're going to need from them to support you, and et cetera, what are the things that are going to change. So that for me was a quite an eye-opener, just to see how it was that sense of just avoiding conversations. So maybe that's the conflict bit, because expecting there to be conflict. Like if I start telling people I need time for me, well, there's going to be
assumption, isn't it?
So there's this assumption that we're going to end up locking horns and it's going to get ugly. And actually, I don't want that because that's just going to drain my energy even more. So I'm not doing that. Therefore, I'm not taking time for me. Therefore, I'm going to head into burnout, because that ultimately is where that leads to. And then you're in a whole other world of things that need to be talked about and discussed, and recovery, etc.
And that is like quite sad, because sometimes I have seen it with my own eyes, from my own experience, that I have that preconception of like, okay, this is how that person is going to react. We're going to have a big fight. It's going to turn ugly. I don't want to deal with that. But then it gets to the point where, okay, I need to have that conversation because nobody's listening to me, or nobody's understanding what I need. And I need something now. And then it becomes like really like, and you get in the conversation almost believing that you know how the whole conversation is going to go. Yes. And you're ready for a big fight. And the other person is like, yeah, that sounds absolutely perfect, whatever. And you're like sitting there thinking to yourself, oh my God, I mean, I have been sitting on this for like a month, a year, whatever time. And the only thing I had to do was forget my assumptions, control what I can control, which means have the discussion, and wait to hear then what the other person is going to say or do, because that is for them to decide, not for me to decide how they're going to react. So it is a shame that we do spend a lot of time in our head thinking of what is going to happen. And some time ago, again, like I was watching a film and it was amazing. There was a line that it really stayed with me. It says, a woman, after having completed the stage of her life where the kids are older, she's maybe changing careers or whatever. It says you need to find out who you were before you were everything for everybody else. And I thought, my God, this line is absolutely the essence of what we all need to think, in our middle age, or whichever time it is that we are reinventing ourselves or trying to figure out who we are and what we want.
Yeah. And interestingly, as you were explaining that piece, Evie, around, finally getting around to having the conversation with somebody and them just saying, okay, well, that's fine, or it's no big deal, or yeah, okay, or, whatever. and it's not what you had set yourself up for. There's also another side to that, which we need to be really mindful of, is if we keep on avoiding and holding back from having a conversation, whatever that conversation is, because we think, believe, have created a storyboard of what it's going to look like when it plays out, and we don't want it and it's not necessary, the issue doesn't disappear, which means at some point you are still going to have the conversation. However, now you're going to go and have the conversation feeling more stressed or more angry or more resentful. And you've got to remember that if you're now going to go and have the conversation from that state, you may now trigger the other person's saboteurs, whatever their saboteurs are. So you may get, that's fine. What's the problem? But you may get the very worst of it all, because you have taken all of this anger, resentment from avoiding it in the first place into the space. And now all you've done is woken up the other person's saboteurs, because everybody has saboteurs, right? And it is so easy to trigger somebody else's by the words that we use, the language we use, our body language or our verbal language, the message that we're purveying. So the avoider is a real little beastie, right? That can really cause a lot of discomfort. And if not addressed, if not recognized, if not worked with through mental fitness, can really just be very challenging, as all the saboteurs can be,
Oh, absolutely. That's the thing. There are some saboteurs that you think, okay, they can't really be that harmful. And you're missing out the point. I mean, like they can be as harmful as any of them. And at the same time, they could be, like as good as any of them if
yes.
you know what to deal with and what to do with them, and also
Yes.
understand the patterns. That's the whole point.
Yes.
So
And certainly
yeah,
for
I
me,
think this.
yeah. Sorry, Evie. So I was just say, certainly with me, with my avoider, what I have learnt or come to realize is that if I'm doing work in particular, so for me, it's probably more work related than it is people related. When I have something that feels like, oh my gosh, this is like a massive piece of work, and I almost feel like I can see Restless saying, "Whoo, I'm here, I'll rescue you." That all I do is just come back to, okay, it's big, there's lots to do, not going to downplay that, but what's the one thing that I absolutely can do right here, right now? Because if I focus on that one thing and I do that one thing, then I'm already in the door. I'm
Absolutely.
already foot in the door, and I'm far more likely to keep going. If I'm still outside the door, looking at the door, feeling all kinds of crazy stuff, and oh, it's uncomfortable and I don't really want to do it, oh my gosh, help me, and no one's here to help me, and oh, what else could I do? Then what I'm really doing is cutting off my ability to get stuck into something and see it through to the end. And I had a fantastic little analogy about this the other day about, what happens with the avoider is that instead of being able to find your space or find a hole and dig deep, so you really create something meaningful and you go deep, what the avoider does is just allows you to do these little holes. So you create lots of little holes because you kind of only go so deep, and then oh my gosh, it's a problem, I need to go and do something else. So the avoider is just stopping you from going deeply into the things that need to be done. And of course, as I said, when you see that play out with the restless, and I can not only say I've seen it, I've felt it, I have experienced it, that can really break your spirit and keep you small. And that is not the life that you are here to live. That's not the life that you're designed to live. You are here to do brilliant things. Whatever the things are that you do, you are here to do them. There is purpose in your being here. And the saboteurs will have you think and believe otherwise. So being able to identify them for me is just it's crucial.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that this is a fabulous point that you're making, and I would love to just say 100%. And the fact that something can break your spirit, that you can avoid happening, please do. Because really there is absolutely no need for any spirit to be broken. We're here to celebrate ourselves, our lives, our spirits, and let's do that. Yeah,
Absolutely. And I think that one of the key things behind switching from the power of the avoider, and this is kind of in your world very much, Evie, where you're a change strategist and you do that sort of stuff, is embracing growth. If you are going to embrace growth, then know that means that yes, there will be situations that maybe feel messy, that feel difficult, that feel demanding. But there is a way to get through it with ease and flow when you step into the sage perspective and be kind enough to yourself to just get started. Just get started. That's for me is the key to most of these things, is just get started. And I think I'm going to stop on that note. I think that's going to be my final word for the avoider.
Fabulous words. But for anyone that is seeing us here or in the replay, do go ahead, if you haven't done it already, take the saboteur assessment. It's an eye-opener, and it's going to be so much fun, because at the end of the day, that's the whole point, understand, learn, grow, and have fun with it.
Yes,
thank you very much,
fun with it. I love that. So don't forget, at the end, there'll be a little QR code, so you can literally just swipe it and it takes you straight to the assessment. Go do the assessment. Reach out to either Evie or myself if you want some help in understanding that assessment. And we are going to have some great things going on in the new year, a community where we're going to be doing a lot of this work, and doing it together, doing it with others, brings another layer of joy, I believe, into the whole thing. But we'll share more about that as we get closer to the time. But in the meantime, have a fantastic Thursday. And Evie, thank you so much, as always.
Thank you, Yvonne. Thank you. Bye, everyone.